system here. Yes, fire precautions as usual on the screen behind me, and councillors, as I say, we have the new webcasting equipment, although the camera isn't following in us, so we have the group shot up there for the whole of the meeting. But as usual, please make sure that your cards are pushed into the slot at the back of the unit, and as ever, please ensure you speak directly into the microphone. So we move to the main items of business. Minutes of the last meeting. The minutes of the last meeting were on the table, have been on the table for the last 30 minutes at least. Is everybody happy that I sign those? Agreed. In fact, Morris will sign those as he was chairman. Amy, any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies from Councillor Dennis Lee, Councillor Peter Martin, Councillor Stephen Reynolds and Councillor Simon Thornton. Thank
you. Declarations of interest.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Ellis has declared a pecuniary test in item B4 and will leave the chamber while that item is considered.
Members, do you have any further declarations to make? Jolly good. Any questions from the public, Amy?
Thank you, Chairman. None received.
Jolly good. Peter, updates. I know you have some for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I have a general update for members following receipt of updated National Planning Practice Guidance. It relates specifically to financial considerations in determination of applications. You will see that officers will always refer to these where relevant, and it's usually when there's a net gain of residential dwellings and you see reference to the new homes bonus and what benefit that is to the council in terms of financially from that point of view. Just as background, Section 70 of the Town and Country Planning Act states that any local financial considerations are a matter to which local planning authorities must have regard to in determining applications, as far as they are material to the application. Local financial considerations are defined as grants from government or sums payable to authority under the Community Infrastructure Levy. This means that what I've referred to, new homes bonus, is capable of being a material planning consideration. But there's a key change in the planning practice guidance which sets out that whether or not a local financial consideration is material to a decision will depend on whether it could help to make the development acceptable in planning terms. It is not appropriate for a decision to be made on the basis that development could have the potential to raise money for a local authority or a government body alone. It must relate to the development. So that's the key change, whereas before we were able to rely on that as a key matter in favour. We can now only rely on it where it would be used to mitigate the development impact of a development. But as the council does not rely on local financial considerations such as a new homes bonus to mitigate against the effects of development to make it acceptable in planning terms, based upon the updated guidance, it should not now form a material planning consideration. If, of course, this was to change or a decision were taken with regards to monies to be received for a specific development to mitigate the impact of development, appropriate advice and weight to be given to that would, of course, be put forward by officers. I'm happy to circulate that and the specific advice by email if that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Members, have you any questions for Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wonder if I can clarify from what you just said. Is that essentially if we have an application where it's a bit of a judgment call, very close, but the one thing that tips it is that we'll get some revenue from it, that's essentially the material planning consideration, but it wouldn't simply be, oh, well, we're going to get some cash and that makes it okay. It's really, it's the bit that tips the balance. Is that what we're saying? Or I'm just struggling to put it into context as to sort of how we would use the financial aspect of it differently to what we've done up until now. Apologies for the confusion.
Thank you, Chairman. I think because it's mainly the new homes bonus we rely on, and the council, sorry, not the council, apologise, the government, when they introduced the new home bonus, were very blatant about being of a benefit to council to encourage them to support new housing coming forward. So they originally set out the new homes bonus would come forward to support councils making positive decisions on delivering housing. So it was very open, very blatant, and so if you deliver this housing, you will get this money back. But what the new guidance is saying actually the councils will still get that money, but you shouldn't be using that as a material consideration, in a balanced consideration, in favour of the development. So you might be getting £100,000 out of a development of so many dwellings that will come towards the council. What it's saying now, unless you're using that to mitigate specifically something that results from that development, you shouldn't be using that in your balancing up of that application. So 100,000 as an example to the council in that instance wouldn't be a material consideration, unless we said actually there's going to be a clear view taken by the council on this specific scheme. It's of a certain scale, there's a bit of infrastructure that needs to be delivered that can't be accommodated by the developer. We're going to put it towards that, and that's when you could then use that money as a sort of balancing exercise. Thank you.
Councillor Bolton, you had a question.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, my understanding is that new homes bonus is gradually being run down or phased out. How does it compare in money terms with any CIL? Because I understand the CIL can be quite significant.
I don't know the specific figures. Obviously, we haven't adopted SIL as yet. But yeah, you're right that the new homes bonus, it's recently changed, the calculations recently changed, and it means we get less, but it's still there at the moment. Don't know where that's going, that's a wider government thing. But it's likely that a SIL contribution will be higher than what you get as from the new homes bonus. In that case, thank you, Chairman. Well, the SIL will just, the SIL will just be basically a tax payable on the development, so that will just be there whether or not the development comes forward. So, yeah, so it's slightly different than the way you balance that, because they would have to pay that, whereas the new homes bonus was a deliberate intention by the government to support development. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Peter. Any other questions? Jolly good. Just to note that in the event of site inspections being necessary as a result of consideration of the applications at this meeting, these will be held on Monday the 2nd of October 2017 at a time to be mutually agreed. So we move on to the main items, and the first is item B1, reference WA 2017-0969, and the proposal is an application under section 73 to vary condition 28 of WA 2016-2496 plan numbers to allow changes to the floor plans and elevations at land at Oxford Ridge, Godalming. And Tim is going to present this case.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, the application is for a variation condition. The application relates to the wider regeneration site at Oxford Ridge, council own application. More specifically, this variation condition refers to the dwellings approved at Site D, which is there labelled on the location plan. The variation condition is to remove previously agreed chimneys on the approved dwellings. The chimneys previously approved were not, didn't serve fireplaces as such, but they were within the design of the scheme for their visual interest. And also a change in flat 14 from a one-bedroom unit to make it a two-bedroom unit. All other aspects of the dwellings at Site D remain the same, including access and parking. This is the block plan previously approved. This is the elevations proposed now for the flattered building. That's just there shown obviously without the chimneys. And here. Unfortunately, these plans, as you see in the agenda, they're the ones taken scanned from our system, and unfortunately the hard copies aren't available. So that's unfortunately the best that we have. But you can see the chimneys here, 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 and here for the flattered building. So they are proposed to no longer be there, as you can see there. Just comparing. This is proposed elevations of the pair of semi-detached four-bedroom properties without the chimneys. And again, apologies for the plans, but there was a central chimney feature there for the two properties there. That's to be removed. And again, the four terraced houses, again without the chimneys as proposed. And previously on the original scheme, as you can see, the chimneys proposed here and here. And this is the proposed floor plan for flat 14. Previously, what was proposed as a bedroom now was a kitchen. So simply a kitchen replaced with a bedroom to make it a 2-bedroom flat. Turning your attention now to the update sheet quickly, you'll see we've added, technically we have to, as we're issuing a new permission for the whole scheme, not just Site D, we have to reimpose all drawing numbers approved under the wider regeneration scheme. So that's why there's a large number of drawings put in there, but that has to be the case, and so that's added under the update. In terms of determining issues with this application is the visual impact and residential amenity. Visually, although the chimneys on the original scheme were added visual interest, we have taken it on its merits for the removal of them, and we still feel that the design of the dwellings and flats is still acceptable. Resi amenity, 1-bed going to 2-bed flat, 2-bed flats still of a good size, and so those are matters of judgment for you this evening. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Tim. Members. Councillor Holder.
Sorry, could I just ask a question on the background to this development? Because I understood that there were 65 dwellings being demolished and 99 dwellings being built in its place. So I'm wondering why these buildings haven't been demolished. Are they part of the original development, or what are they?
Thank you, Chairman. Site D has actually been cleared now, so the original dwellings on site, or for some of the part of the site, have been demolished, and they're obviously ready to start construction with these, but they've tweaked the design before they commence with the construction, or seeking to tweak the design before they commence with the construction of the new replacement dwellings. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Bolton.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify, there are 4 sites, A, B, C, D, and collectively they make up the 65 and 99 new properties. I think Site D has 16 properties. I quite accept officers' statement that removing the chimneys would not significantly change the appearance, although many of the older houses in that locality do have chimneys, because that was the way of heating a house in the old days. I'm also pleased that, after all, if we get a 2-bedroom dwelling rather than a 1-bedroom, we might get a little bit more rent. Thank you, Councillor. But that's all I would like to say.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
I live in a house without a chimney, and I defy anybody to drive past and actually even notice that it hasn't got a chimney. They generally aren't noticed. I mean, and I think whether it has a chimney or doesn't have a chimney, I think most people would drive past and not pay the slightest bit of notice to it. It looks more obvious to us here looking at the plans, because you're seeing a with and without, and it becomes very, very easy to spot. But when you're actually driving past them once they're all built, I suspect nobody would notice, and people wouldn't look at it thinking how strange. And both my neighbours have chimneys, and I don't think it looks odd on the street scene. So I think these are perfectly reasonable tweaks. I suspect it will reduce the cost because it's less to build. Actually, it makes the roof that much more rain resistant, because there's fewer gaps that any rain might be able to come through, so less maintenance. So I mean, I think that there's very good reasons for doing this, and the change of the 1-bed to a 2-bed, it's a slight design in the way that the change in the way that the flat will be lived in, but that's the way many people live anyway. So I mean, again, I've got no difficulty with this.
Thank you. I think the cost saving was the main reason for removing the chimneys. Councillor Wheatley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It just crosses my mind, apart from making it look nice, clean lines, that if we are going to be subject to stronger winds and other nasty weather, it could be that it's actually safer without chimneys that can be blown off.
Councillor Byam.
Yeah, 2 points. On the false chimneys routine, we had false chimneys, we insisted on them on the Bramley Grange development. which had been a hotel, and when they rebuilt, they decided to put these chimneys on. The most amount of money spent and the amount of time with scaffolding up, trying to repair and make them watertight, etc., has been tremendous. It actually stopped for the last couple of years, but for many years it seemed almost continuous. I'd hate to see my house without a chimney, because I'll be walking out all the time with blinking eyes with smoke in my eyes because I've got a wood-burning stove, but it's not fine.
Any further comments before we move to the recommendation? Okay, the recommendation is that subject to conditions 1 to 22 as set out in the agenda, with an amendment to condition 22 as detailed on the update sheet, as well as informatives 1 to 14, permission be granted. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. So permission is granted. Moving on to item B2, reference WA 2017-0795, proposal application under 73 to section 73 to vary conditions 1, approved plans, and 5 of W 2016-0161, construction environmental management plan, to allow changes to site layout as amended by plan received on the 20th of June 2017 and amplified by construction environmental management plan received on the 15th of August 2017 at Regeneration Area Site Office, Oxford Ridge, Godalming, and once again Tim will present this.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, again, up at Oxford Ridge, the proposal is a variation condition to vary the drawing numbers condition and condition 5, the construction environmental management plan, to reposition the construction, parking and site compound, and also temporarily reroute the bus route up there. The original permission, so this location plan outlined in red, is currently the green up there at Oxford Ridge. This is the original approved site plan. This sought for the temporary period of 5 years as a site compound includes site office, contractor parking and material storage and loading area. So before, originally, this is the proposed parking area for the contractors and delivery, drop-off of materials for the wider regeneration scheme. What is proposed now is no longer have parking up here, have parking down here, in fact more contractors parking, with the access coming here and also temporarily rerouting the bus stop through here. So in terms of storage of materials and deliveries, that will no longer take place on the former green. In fact, deliveries would come through here into site D and also material storage as well over here for site D. So the plan is that the deliveries and materials, whilst site D is being constructed, would actually go on site itself for site D. And then as the council work through permissions on the other regeneration areas, they'd have to look at again where the materials would be stored and deliveries for those sites. So really, in terms of determining issues, sorry, refer to the update sheet first. The council have submitted, the applicant submitted a revised CMP. We have that reviewed by the Environmental Health Officer, and you can see I've got no objection, and also the County Highway Authority again with no objection. You'll see an officer response to an additional recommendation from Environmental Health there. And in terms of matters of judgment, visual amenity, it will still be enclosed with a site hoarding. Residential amenity, the actual contracted car parking will be no longer as close to existing residential properties, not part of the wider regeneration site opposite. So we actually think it'd be a benefit there. So overall, Chairman, Officer satisfied with the proposal and recommend permission be granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Members. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very pleased to support this because we are supporting directly many local residents who have significant mobility problems. If we couldn't reroute the bus, the residents may not be able to use a bus service down to Godalming, and they would feel even more isolated. But by rerouting the bus, space is quite tight around here. The buses have difficulty in turning. By rerouting the bus route, we will be enormously supportive of local residents. The only thing I'd just like to have assurance of is that when all this work is done, and we've torn up the green, will it be restored to what it was originally? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Before we come to that, Councillor Martin.
This makes absolute sense. I mean, there was concern at the time when this application first came before this planning committee that there was an awful lot of space being taken up by the compound, and that if you had material storage where it is, there's going to have to be further traffic to get the materials from the central site compounds to the various sites around the area. It seems eminently more sensible to drop the materials off on the specific sites that they are related to, thus actually reducing the number of traffic movements and the movement of materials. I mean, there are an awful lot of people up there, that will have to be living with this. And the fact that we're putting in more, or that the developers are putting in more contractor parking, can only be a good thing. Having lived nearby to major development sites in the past, I know that during the construction period there is an awful lot of traffic and parking issues, and anything that can be done to alleviate that problem must be seen as a good thing. And ultimately, I think this is Waverley as the developer being seen as a good developer and mindful of our neighbours. So I think that this is an excellent proposal.
Thank you. Did you wish to address the reinstatement? I would imagine that's an original condition, is it? But Tim, would you like to address that one?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Condition 3, we've reimposed that condition. It does ask them to submit details to us. So it says land shall be restored to a condition to be first agreed in writing by the local planning authority. So, so that condition is there to be adhered to. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. My only comment is the conclusion on page 40, that the hoarding should be erected round the site for a period of 5 years. I would have thought it would be more expedient if the hoarding was demolished at the same time as the site was finished.
Sorry, Peter, did you wish to answer that?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, effectively, we've put the 5 years in consultation with the applicant, basically build out rates for that. If they are to finish quicker than that, which would be great, they will remove it and restore it as quickly as possible, because it will be part of that same project. But we have specifically put that 5 years on, and that was what was on the original permission that we're varying. So it would allow effectively what you want to do and restoring. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Wheatley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Another good point, the reduction of the area of the green used for the site compound would reduce its overall visual impact. It would allow more of the green to stay available for recreation during the construction process. So it can only be for the good, can't it?
Indeed. Now, I understand that the car park that was approved was never built anyway, so the green is still there, so that's good. Are you happy to move on to the recommendation? Jolly good. So the recommendation is fairly simple, that subjects to conditions 1 to 5 and informatives 1 to 2, permission be granted. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So that permission is granted, and I will take my leave. Good night.
Right. Good evening, members. Bugging's turn again. I'm last on the list. So the application is, let me get my screen up working. Not working. It's item B3 WA 2017-1357, and it's proposal for the erection of 2-storey side and rear extension at 9 Langham Close, Godalming. Can we have the presentation, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So this site is located at the northwest corner of the end of Langham Close, which is a residential close just off Cathedral Lane. The surrounding development along Douglas Drive and in part along Cathedral Lane is commercial, but Langham Close itself is residential in character. As you can see on the block plan here, the extensions would wrap around that northwest corner. The part here for the rear extension, there is already a rear extension there, and in part, in approximately where I'm hovering my mouse here, will be built over to form a second floor or a first floor in there. This is the existing elevations, very akin to others along the road, and here are the proposed. So the side extension here of 2 stories is recessed, as you can see from the front, and at the rear, this is the part which will be built over the existing first floor. It's of note, and you'll see it on the floor plan coming up, that the neighbouring property here has a rear extension already in the form of a conservatory. So that's existing floor plans. As you can see on the proposed plans, it's to add extra habitable space on ground and first floor with the increase of 1 bedroom. There's the conservatory as mentioned. Here's some photographs, the side elevation where the 2-storey element will come from, and at the rear where the first floor extension will be built from. The ridge height will largely match the same as will the roof slope on the front here. In terms of our determining issues, the matters for your judgment are the impact it has on the visual amenity and the impact it has on the residential amenity of the surrounding properties. And as per my report, I'm satisfied that there is no adverse impact here. I'd like to bring your attention to the update sheet. As the report was written prior to the closure of representations, we were awaiting additional comments. None have been received, so the revised recommendation is that, subject to conditions, permission be granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, as we all know, but this would have been dealt with by under delegated powers if the member of the council had not been the agent with this application. Have you any points to make before we go to the decision? So the revised recommendation is on the update sheet that, subject to conditions, permission be granted. Is that agreed? Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Well, that we have no reasons to exclude the press or public. No other items on the agenda. So that concludes the meeting. Thank you very much.